it's our character that gives us privileged opportunities to be influential. It's our character that allows us to put God on display and Jesus on display. It's our character that's going to give us a position of authority.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, Harrison Butker replied to ESPYs host Serena Williams for really a dig that she made to him during the ESPYs. The ESPYs are a sports award show, and Harrison Butker had given a graduation speech months earlier at a historic Catholic college where he really laid out a lot of Catholic doctrine and encouraged young women to really pursue being moms, and that we should have a culture that really celebrates that. It was really an amazing speech that Harrison Butker gave at this Catholic college. And Serena Williams took, I would say, kind of opportunity months later to really address what she thought about Harrison Butker. She was joined on stage by her sister, Venus Williams, and another person, actress Quinta Brunson. And the three really addressed the women in the audience about their achievements in sports. Venus implored the sports fans to enjoy watching women's sports like you would any other sports. She says, quote, because they are sports. And then Serena Williams says, quote, except you, Harrison Butker, we don't need you. And she looked into the camera as she said that, really trying to hold back a laugh. And Brunson, the actress, added, at all, like ever, kind of saying and reiterating that they don't really want Harrison Butker to be a part of really supporting women's sports at all. You know, Butker had a really interesting response. He said, quote, I thought Mrs. Williams was a great host and applaud her for using her platform to express her beliefs on a variety of topics. Sports are supposed to be a great unifier. Butker goes on to say, and at an event dedicated to celebrating a diverse group of men and women who have accomplished great feats, she used it as an opportunity to disinvite those with whom she disagrees with from supporting fellow athletes, end quote. You know, Dr. Kathy, you've written really a couple books on character, and I just love your book, and it's really given me a fun framework to think through character. What does it do for children when we really explain character, really in the way that you've explained it in your book?
Yeah, thanks so much, Wayne. Well, I think it gives them hope that they can become who they were created to be, that it's our character that gives us privileged opportunities to be influential. It's our character that allows us to put God on display and Jesus on display. It's our character that's going to give us a position of authority. You know, Harrison Butker has character, and he had a right to the decisions that he made, the values that he supports. He had a right to give the speech, especially because it was at a historic Catholic college. He wasn't doing it in the mainstream where not everybody may have agreed and it might have been a more awkward moment. I think kids need to know that who they are in the dark when no one's watching is more important than who they are on the red carpet. Because who we are when the burden is heavy and no one is watching is who we're going to consistently be, which is going to give us that position of influence, which was what we want. When I talk to kids about the heart is the wellspring of life, and they can be making decisions that are good for them and good for others, it empowers them to love well. And we're called to love, to fulfill the Great Commandment, and the Great Commission is what we're all about. And without character of generosity and gratitude and joy and self-efficacy and wisdom, it's hard to do that. So I think character gives people the opportunity to become who they want to be. And I'm going to say one other thing, Wayne. I just so appreciated your affirmation of the book. You know, resiliency is one of the top Baker's Dozen 13. I wrote a whole book on resiliency. That's how important that character quality is. But resiliency made the Baker's Dozen 13. And Harrison Butker has been a tremendous example of resiliency. He has not backed down. He has not gone quiet, radio silent. He has not changed his perspective. He has continued to appropriately stand up for himself and his right to have the beliefs that he has. And I very much appreciate that he handled even this situation with great character, that he didn't slam her. That he made a true statement that she took an opportunity to dismiss and reject an entire group of people, which was just foolish. I'm going to say one other thing. You can cut it from the broadcast if you want to, but her statement, you should be watching women's sports like you would any other sports because they are sports. I'm sorry. That's like a rather unnecessary statement. I would think that we know they are sports. And nowadays, with women's professional basketball filling auditoriums more than ever before, that was such an unnecessary statement. And it shows me the pride of her versus the humility of Harrison Butker, which again made the Baker's Dozen top 13.
Dr. Kathy, I really like what you've said and what you kind of outlined with Harrison Butker. His jersey's reportedly the number one selling jersey in the NFL after this incident. That's the second time this has happened for him. A lot of people look at him as kind of a hero, and they really wear his colors and his jersey when they might not naturally be fans. I'm always a little bit nervous of this, though. There's a song by an artist that my wife and I really like called Ben. His name's Ben Rector. He has a song called Heroes, and he highlights how sometimes we actually miss our old heroes when we were kids because as we grow up, they just actually aren't really heroic, or they change their views, or the things that they were heroic for have shifted. And I don't want to hitch my wagon to Harrison Butker because I like how he's responded in the last 6 months. If something heroic changes in his habits or his attitude, it could really, mess with my child, especially if they're building their sense of security or identity or belonging or purpose kind of a little bit on his story. Is that a good point for us to talk about with our kids? And maybe how do we do that with them? Encourage, especially when so much of culture encourages kids to emulate people in society. It can be really a hard thing for them. And even, I think, a weight that us as parents can kind of feel too. I can never mess up in front of my kids because I might mess up their faith later on. How should we talk to our kids about that idea?
Yeah, good points. I think I would come back to what I've said, and that is that I've said it in other broadcasts, this idea that we make choices. So the choice to be kind, we're not kind 24/7, 365. We make a choice to be kind. Now, the greater consistency, the better. I read about that in the book. Our values are supposed to help us to control our decision-making related to our character and what part of our heart shows up. So I think in this decision, we talk about Harrison Butker's choice now as a husband and father and the beliefs that he has and how he's carrying on. And is there evidence that the speech shows up in his daily life? Like that would be a great, like if I were teaching a course in a high school, I might assign that as a topic to some middle school, high school students, do some research. Is there evidence that he believes what he said? And so, and then if 6 months or a day from now, he's in the news for a negative reason, then we talk with our kids about, okay, does that make the last positive thing false? Or does it mean that he was having a bad moment in a bad day? Is there evidence now that he's made a total shift? And we talk about that. It reminds me of spiritual leaders who have fallen. And it's a tragic to see in just the last, couple of years, the number of we thought solid men and women in the faith with following, then they fall and something happens. Does that mean that anything that we learned from them should be rejected? Does it mean if you came to faith in Christ through the ministry of one of these men or women, does it make it false? Do we throw away all of the books that they've written? Those are conversations to have. And that's all relevant, I think, to this. I'm going to say too, Wayne, that I think we need good news. I think it's very important that kids have heroes, real heroes, not comic book heroes. And I think parents should be their heroes. Grandparents should be their heroes. Pastors and school secretaries and the leaders of the homeschool co-ops. We've got to give kids heroes that they love and can emulate and can stand up with and stand up to. And we talk about how we're human. And I think that's part of the action here. We want good news. Kids are looking for it. We live in a chaotic time. So having a hero like Harrison Butker who believes what he believes and is supportive, I think is really wise.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I really like that. I think that you're right to kind of point us to maybe some of those everyday heroes. We kind of, I might call them that, but to link it to really the character traits. That was a really insightful thing, I think, to really focus on the character trait and not necessarily the person, and then to ask if they continue to live it out. I think that's really great. And as our kids kind of grow up from when they're young to high school, I know that they're going to, really face opposition, much like I would probably say with, Harrison Butker. Then in 6 months or a year, he's going to face opposition, and he might not come out with the character trait that I expect him to. And really I would say maybe even kind of be competent with his character traits in different situations all the time. How can we kind of guide our kids in building those character traits so that they do look, really competent to handle challenging times or times where their ideas or their character, really their virtues are being tested? How do we build that with our kids right now?
Two things come to mind. Again, I wrote a whole book, so people can check it out. But the two things that come to mind in the context that you set up would be this. I think we do a better job of talking out loud about why we do what we do. So if you're with your kids and you're in a slow line at the store, the other people around you are complaining and patient, but you're not, talk with them about why you didn't complain. Why did you not make the clerk at the store feel bad for how long it was taking? Why did you choose to be silent? Or why did you even choose to say, thanks for being here today? It looks like you've had a long day. Let's let our kids know that there's a belief system, there's an internal something that's happening that's causing our words to come out. And again, it's our values, it's our beliefs, it's our belief that every person matters and that looking for the good is healthier than looking for the bad. So I think we talk out loud about the decisions we make and why we make them. And maybe we even say, did you notice how the clerk responded to my kindness? That's why I did it. She's a person of worth that did not deserve to be treated disrespectfully from the person in the line. And I chose to hopefully build her back up because that's what I believe biblically we've been called to do. I also think that when we catch our children being good, we should not tell them they're good. You've heard me talk about this before, Wayne. The word good simply means that I've judged you and I'm happy, but it doesn't allow you to repeat what was good. So was your child patient, generous, resilient, careful, caring, flexible, kind, grateful, honest, other-centered? What was it that your child was doing? And I've heard from some people who have almost memorized the appendix in the back of the book so that when they catch their kids being good, they can tell them specifically what they were doing that was good, because then children want to repeat it and children are capable of repeating it. And that's how their character is changed.
As Dr. Kathy was talking today, it reminded me of a passage that comes out of Esther, chapter 7, and I'll begin reading at verse 1. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet, and as they were drinking wine on the second day, the king asked again, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. And then the queen answered, if I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request. The rest of this chapter is really challenging. I mean, the whole book of Esther is really challenging. It's a story of a young woman and her family and how they resolved that they would have character in really hard times. It's something that when we look throughout scripture, we find that character is a muscle. It's built. It's something that people don't just get kind of infused with at birth, that there are really little things that really inspire and build habits and muscles for them to exercise later on. And as Dr. Kathy said at the beginning of the podcast, these opportunities where we display and exercise different character traits, they really give an opening for the gospel to be known. And in this story of Esther, it's really an opening where Esther's character and Mordecai's character really are things that God uses to open up hearts and minds, to cause whole plans or whole parts of a storyline to deviate, to really find resolution. I wonder if we give our kids a perspective of what character does, especially inside of stories, when we call it out. One of the things that Dr. Kathy mentioned today even was to give an explanation of why we do things. Why is it important for us to do these little things? It can be really powerful. It actually can really reinforce ideas of who kids are inside of their own mind and the way that they think. that, our family does it this way, or our family really has an attitude of this inside of these kinds of situations. Doing that, I think, can give our kids courage and confidence and maybe even clarity to live well in some challenging times. I think doing that can be a bright light that shines and cuts through some challenging things that kids are going to face later on in life. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment, Facing the Dark. Dr. Kathy and I are so glad that you're joining us, and on behalf of Dr. Kathy, I want to say thanks for listening, and we're really looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.